All right, so you've been through Tuesday and Thursday, all those TLTs and whatever, but today
is the meat and the potatoes of the TLFs. We're finally getting into the range after the first week and a half. I mean, Tyrannical kind of started as well, but there's not enough data on Tyrannical to kind of get a better sense of it.
We have Fortified.
Yeah, it's looking really interesting to say the least. Like, listen, a little bit of a disclaimer. We know that the meta kind of favors melee a little bit more than ranged, and like the melees are a little bit higher than ranged. Even so, just looking at the data, the ranged are doing really well. However, there's a weird quirk to this week's tier list, man.
There's a couple of caveats for the ranged DPS so far, and we're gonna talk about them specifically when we get to them. The thing is, like we took a lot of data from Warcraft logs. There's a lot of logs that kind of shown what things are, how things are being made so far. It's a lot of like fortified stuff right now, and there's also an argument to be made on that. Obviously, we look at Raider.io as well to look at the scores and the performance. You know, a little bit of subcreation, although subcreation is very, very strict, right? It's either like one spec S tier and the rest B or something like that. So you kind of made a mix out of all of these and made this rankings.
It's really hard to like gauge like the top specs and what they're doing best, because most people don't actually log their highest keys. We just get the rankings like, oh, this person has done a +20, but how much damage they do, like, we don't know. So we kind of looked at the overall DPS and like similar keys to kind of see like how each of these specs will mash up in terms of damage, but obviously damage is not everything. But that is like a key important part when especially you're pushing tougher and tougher timers to get that key done in time. All
right, let's start it off with Affliction Warlock, which is like the first caveat of this tier list.
Speaking of damage.
So, just judging by the amount of logs we have so far, and looking at the highest number of keys these specs are doing, Affliction is sitting somewhere really bad. I mean, not bad in the sense that, okay, they're doing 14s and 15s and whatnot.
I think there's some 17s.
There's
done
a couple of
like
some of the best are doing 17s as well. It's just like when you look at the other amount of logs, and obviously you cannot talk about a Warlock spec without thinking about Demo, which we'll get to.
Yeah, eventually.
Okay, because another reality is most of the people that do all of these high keys and play Warlock, they're probably gonna choose to play Demo instead of Affliction.
Like the discrepancy, and you'll see by the end of the tier list. Affliction just doesn't have the right numbers. I mean, we know it's gonna get buffed. We don't have the buffs yet. Still, and to be fair, this is maybe the biggest upset since we've been testing it in the beta, and we thought like just generally looking at the talents that Affliction is gonna take it out of the park. It's very surprising, but. Also, I mean, Affliction is kind of like our lowest ranked spec.
I mean, we would have put it into an F tier, to be honest, as compared to all of the other
We don't really
specs.
have F tiers in our tier list because there's not, usually
we keep it because an F tier means that this spec would not perform well into a +11 or 10 or whatever. But there's still a lot of logs with Affliction that are going for like 14s and 15s, which is decent enough, right? Obviously, the big boys, the big specs are pushing 20s and 21s. We have 2K rated people in the range DPS as well. We're going to get to them, and this is why we have to like, okay, Affliction is really at the bottom of the barrel. Now, let's talk about Boomkin, because I remember when we did the predictions video, a lot of people were up in arms, like, oh, Boomkin is not ever this, at the most it's going to be a B tier. Well, checking the logs and the data from Raider.io, a couple of information bits over there point to Boomkin doing really good damage. But okay, let's talk about this. This is high keys, okay? If you're gonna take a Boomkin into a +8 or a +9, it'll probably do shit. You'll not have the time.
It's gonna be really bad. That's why we caveated this when we talked about the Mythic Zeros, because it's based on Mythic Zeros. The mobs are really quick. And an extra thing, like we looked at Boomkins, we looked at the top Boomkins and the overall Boomkins, and if you look at the overall performance of all of the specs, Boomkin is among the top, if not the top range spec. Right now, we're kind of seeing it as A tier.
Yeah, because it is A tier. I mean, damage-wise, keys done, or everything, it's there.
It's doing 19s and 20s. It's really, really, really good. And this is before the nerfs. I'm sorry, before the buffs and the talent changes that we're gonna see in balance. I think it was 10.0.5. Which is gonna come in a couple of weeks, months, depending exactly when they're gonna put
after those will kick in, I can see Boomkin going even higher because the dot playstyle will not be as problematic as it is right now. But even with that, in a week where you have like fortified and its high keys, you can see the performance of Boomkin actually being something to be amazed
Yeah,
at because the damage is ridiculous still.
Plus, we would like a lot more data on Tyrannical as well, which we don't really have right now because it just started.
Just started, yeah.
So we'll see exactly how Boomkin. I mean, it's not S tier like we predicted, but it's far from being a very bad spec.
I still predicted being S tier. Just wait for those changes. But okay, let's see Arcane Mages. And Arcane Mages, dude.
This is like
a 180, right?
Exactly, man. Like Arcane is kicking it out of the park. Obviously, right now, depending on what you watch in terms of competitive WoW, you're probably seeing a lot more Arcane in raids in the race world first. Obviously, they're really good. And yeah, we don't have enough Tyrannical data, but seeing as how good they are in raid bosses, we can only assume that it's probably going to be even better once we have like a couple of weeks of Tyrannical to actually get a feel of like how Arcane is dealing with all the affixes. Right now, it's actually above Boomkin, which might not say much to a lot of you because you don't really see Boomkin in that high regard, but Arcane is really good.
It's really good, and it deals very, very well. It deals way better than its counterparts, Frost and Fire, in terms of like the big pulls and AoE damage, right? As Flame mentioned, it's going to be an interesting time to see, like, after we get some more data on Tyrannical, if things like change between the specs, but so far Arcane is on top with the big boys. It's in damage done, in keys that we've seen. A lot of logs for Arcane are like 17s, but there's also a lot of 20s.
Yeah, I think Arcane is like, there are Boomkins that are doing 19s and 20s, but Arcane has more 20s done across the board.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If you look at, let's say, like Mythic score, right, or IO score, Arcane is like a smidge higher than Boomy, which is interesting, but I can definitely see them struggling and fighting against that Tyrannical week and more Tyrannical affixes in the future.
But happy for the Arcane boys nonetheless, man. It's about time you see some more Arcane in the meta, right? All right, Beast Mastery Hunter. Interesting here. This is one of the...
This is a weird spec because when we looked at the Beast Mastery Hunters, like just to put into context, Beast Mastery will kind of rank it at around B tier. And that's because right now Beastmasters have a wide range in the way that they're doing their keys. Like they've managed to clear a couple of 20s, but they're still struggling on all the others. Well, maybe they didn't have enough time. Maybe the most hunters played marksmanship, because marksmanship is, you know, a little bit better. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
But Beastmaster is like super solid. I am actually more and more intrigued about the spec. It's actually the first all that I'm leveling, considering that I really wanted Boomkin, and I'm like surprised at what it's doing.
Yeah, the B tier on this tier list right now, it's still the safe zone. So whatever you see in B tier, it's not at all bad. Again, you see there's a couple of logs there with plus 20 keys from BM Hunters, but the average, like the average keys you're gonna see is like fiddling somewhere around 15s, some 16s, some 17s. Not as many 20 keys being done by BMs as opposed to, like, I don't know, Arcane Mages or even Boomkins, right?
Yeah.
This I mean, again, guys, if you play like at a high level, that's fine. But if you're like us, like average Joe, and trying to push your next 11 key or 12 key or whatever, you play BM, you're gonna wreck. That's just, you know, that's how just
it's good. It's good
how the cookie crumbles. Next up, Demonology Warlock.
We talked it, we mentioned it, you were hoping to see it. Demonology is our first spec that goes way into the S tier, and it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think we predicted this is gonna be A tier, not S tier, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so hey, this is fun to see. We were kind of like wrong about predicting Demonology.
The exact tier, but we kind of expected Demo to do like really high. I think we ranked Balance over Demo, but I think they were pretty close.
Hey, we admit our mistake. But it's still prediction. How can we have known?
I am so happy for Demonology doing so well, because it has some of the coolest talents that have been designed, and obviously it's really good to see a spec that has historically never really inspired a lot of hope from Warlock players that it's ever going to be doing good. Even though in Shadowlands the last seasons has gotten some big oomph from the tier sets and all of that, right now, like probably with 2-piece, maybe 4-piece is still reigning supreme, and I cannot wait to see how this changes moving forward.
I think this is the only spec where you consistently see plus 19s and plus 20s, a lot more than you see that on Boomy on Arcane as well, but this is like the most amount of logs we've come across.
I think overall it's one of the specs that is the only one as of recording this video that has done plus that has reached 2K rating with just
like you mentioned that. And this is like strictly in Fortified, which is like a big feat to do, given that, you know, you had like 1 week to do so, and this is like, you know, so some players achieve 2K. That's huge, man. And, you know, now let's talk about Destruction Warlock.
Dude, this is so weird. So Destruction Warlock is in a similar vein as Affliction, which is really weird because you're seeing Demo at the top, Affliction at the bottom, and Destruction is kind of okay. So this is where it would probably break apart, because we kind of wanted
Yeah.
put Affliction a little bit lower than
This would be D tier
This
and
is
Affliction would
actually
have been F tier, right? But we'll keep Affliction at the tail, okay? But again, and this is the symptom, right? When you have a spec like Demo, who's like having all of the tools to be like Giga Gods and big packs and single boss fights and everything around, it's a given that most of these players, these Warlock mains, will choose to go for the highest performance spec, and that is Demo.
We don't usually rank specs so low, but I think at this point maybe it's worth mentioning that the numbers are just not quite there, because there's a point where, okay, popularity goes into it, utility goes into it, but it was never really, at least in the last couple of months and seasons that I remember, it was never this big of a difference between the top and the bottom. And right now, this is just kind of how it is. We probably will have to just wait for buffs for Destro.
Yeah, that's the honest truth, man. And again, we can look at some of the logs and the keys that Destro done. Obviously, you're gonna look at an average of 15s and 16s. There's a couple of logs with 18s and 19s, but not that many. Your average Destruction Warlock, when at least the ones who log, you're gonna see a lot of like 15s and whatnot. So it's a big difference between Arcane, Boomy, and the Demo, which are looking at an average of 19s. Next on the list, another problem.
You're not gonna be happy with this one either, man.
Oh man, this feels so bad. Frost mages and
fire mages, rather.
Fire mages. Sorry, fire mages.
We're getting to frost.
Listen, like the most interesting thing, like when we seen higher logs from like fire mage keys, what we discovered is, and I'm sorry to say this, but the players that were in those keys or whatever kind of got carried because the damage was like in some of those logs, the damage was even below the tank.
Yeah, we've seen some pairs do a little bit higher than the fire. This is one of the harder ones as well, because there are fire mages that have cleared 20s as of recording this, but when you actually try to find the numbers, they're a little bit on the low side.
Yeah,
which obviously this is like pre all the buffs that have been announced. And at the end of the day, I don't know if they were just like a group of friends that they were hoping, or maybe that person just didn't want to play Arcane and it's like, I'm going fire this round. It's not, I mean, the damage is okay, rather, but when you're looking at the top of the top, right, that's not where you want. You don't really want to like fight for the spot with the tank.
With the tank. So it's still a D tier.
Yeah, it's
unfortunately. So this is the thing, right? This is like the D tier should have been fire and Destro, and we would have put Affliction in F. But I guess you guys get the image. Like Affliction is like the top and tail of everything, and there's still decency there for fire and Destro, because again, you're looking at an average of 15s and 16s. All right.
Sure.
Now, next on the list, Frost Mage. Not too much of a different story. I feel like Frost and Fire are kind of like, more or less.
Frost actually does a little bit more, because Frost has done some 20s as well, but it definitely does a little bit more than Fire.
I mean, you would see it with better performance than a tank.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Well, yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like it's in that bad of a spot, but however, it's still one of those specs that would require a little bit of assistance from the devs, and we're likely going to see buffs, because listen, I know if you're not playing Arcane and you're playing a mage, you're probably going to be a little bit, but man, I want some juice too, and it's likely going to come, judging by how often we're getting these tuning, because right now Frost is kind of like C tier.
Yeah, it is.
So it's a little bit above, but it's not quite where, the big boys are.
Yeah, better than these for sure. On the other hand,
well,
Marksmanship Hunter.
Listen,
I mean, come on,
it's
baby.
a totally different story, man.
Come on, baby. The Marksmanship is like when you look at the logs, when you look at Rare.io, and even in sub-creation, I think on some part, if I'm not, I could be mistaken. But let's just keep logs and Rare.io. You're gonna see a lot of high keys with a lot of damage. And this is again, given the fact that now most of the comps are melee focused, right? Where you don't see like the top of the top, is you're gonna just see melees all around. But when you do have a marksman in the team,
it's pumping.
He's gonna pump.
And during the fortified week, marksman together with Demo were the only specs to break the 2K rating.
2K rated, yeah.
So that's really good. I mean, I kind of always expected after Shadowlands for marksman to have like a really good kit that synergized with the contents of Mythic Plus, with the addition of volley and like quick short bursts of damage in terms of AoE. It's really good. It's all the way high up, boy.
It's here, man. It's here with Demo, man. It's here with Demo. And it's no surprise here because, again, these are the only two specs that have achieved 2K rating so far. And this, again, guys, it's on Fortified. So we'll see how things change. But I am not expecting like a big ass drop off. I'm actually expecting a lot of these specs to go up. This is the thing. A Boomkin, Arcane, probably BM at some point. And there's still like all of these specs. You look at Affliction will be getting buffs as well as Fire as well. So this is pre-buff era, right?
Yeah, so it's likely Marksman is going to stay pretty good, even if you don't have a lot of tyrannical data right now where it might skew the performance. We do know that the hunters in the race world first are playing Marksman over every other spec. So it's likely that Marksman is still going to be really good after a couple of weeks when we look at it, the overall performance.
All right, boy, let's talk about Devastation.
Devastation. This has been
another weird one, right?
A little bit of a surprise because Devastation is good, but I mean, I think pretty much everybody that plays Devastation right now kind of feels the problem with the single target, which even in a fortified week where most of this data comes from, is definitely felt, and even there, I mean, you can see Devastation all the way down to B tier. Well, B tier is still good.
It's still the safe zone, man. I mean, come on, we're looking at, you know, pretty high keys still.
The Devastations that have cleared the highest amount of keys that got them all the way up to B tier are doing really good in their parties. No matter what composition they have, they're like melting the meters. But I can definitely see them struggling more in the tyrannical side of things because it's really hard. The way that the talents are set up is really hard to go full on single target or full on AoE. So it's likely that we'll see some discrepancies. I'm curious to see how it's going to be buffed. I mean, we know that the Disintegrator is going to be buffed. We don't know exactly how much that's going to be. The buff is really good, but that's going to be a while until it actually translates into data.
Oh yeah. And even with that still, you can talk about Devastation, you know, doing an average of plus 17s and 18s, and there's plenty of 20s as well. Not as many as, you know, Marksman or Demo or even Arcane and Boomy, but it's still respectable over there. Doing a little bit better than PM. So it's not a tragic story. They're still wrecking it all over the place. Next on the list, Elemental Shaman.
Shamans. The Shamans are actually
really
surprising.
good.
Elemental, we kind of knew Elemental was good, and we kind of like secretly hope was like, man, are we gonna see Elemental being pretty good? And Elemental is actually pretty good. It's way at the top of the A tier, really close.
Takes the lead. I mean, it could have been S tier, but just, you know what? We kept Demo and Marksman and not placed Elemental on S tier just because these are the only two specs that got the 2K rating. If we had an Elemental, maybe somebody got it up until we got to publish and record and publish this video, but that doesn't mean jack shit. Elemental does ridiculous amount of damage all across the board, and you can see once again super high keys being done by most of these locks. The thing is, and this is a reality we have to go through, it also has the enhancement component over there, which will have the melee Mythic plus DPS tier list next week.
Let's just say enhancement is really good.
Let's just say this hard competition, if you're playing a Shaman and you have like the option to play Elemental or enhancement, and your only objective is to like just push high, and high, you're probably gonna go enhancement. Find out why next week. But so far, so good. Elemental is rocking it, as I've said, big ass damage all over the place. Yeah, and poof.
Last but not least,
surprise, Shadow Priest.
This is actually one of the more controversial specs because right now,
why, Flame?
Well, we might make some people upset, and we're sorry, but data is data right now. Shadow Priest is A tier. It's a little bit below Boomy, but they're very close in performance.
There it
now,
is. Deal with it.
You could argue that, you know, Shadow Priest is so high because it provides power infusion, but the damage is also there, man.
Crazy,
it's
man.
It's really good.
Okay, we have to be real. A lot of teams pick up Shadow Priest for the power infusion.
It's a good addition, yeah.
Yeah, because you're gonna have two power infusions regardless. You're probably gonna have a Holy Priest. If you're not gonna have a Holy Priest, you're gonna have a Resto Druid in that team. You're gonna bring a Shadow Priest for that power infusion. But not only that, if it was only that, yeah, sure, we can talk about cheesing stuff. But dude, have you seen like the damage profile of a Shadow Priest in high keys? It's very potent and big.
So far, it's really good overall. And although most of this data is once again from the Fortified Week, which is like more AoE, and we know that Mindsear just like melts the meters. Shadow Priest has always been like a very good single target spec, so I'm actually curious to see how this looks in a couple of weeks once we have a more rounded vision of the overall performance.
Isn't Shadow Priest in that log where it was like the only 21 or among the...
Oh yeah. We actually, when we were looking at the logs, out of the 8 tier, I think Shadow Priest was the only spec that did a 21. We couldn't really tell if it was carried or not because it was just a leaderboard, but it was completed at the time of this recording where no other 8 tier spec has done a 21, but the rest, that was like by one player. But hey, that managed to do it, so...
But the average keys for the Shadow Priest were like somewhere between 17s and 18s. A lot more locks from like Elemental, Arcane, and Boomy were like on the 19 area, right? For sure. So it kind of deserves its 8 tier position, and it was very surprising to see. We know that not a lot of people enjoyed the playstyle, a couple of problems with the talents and stuff. We are aware of this, but hey, data is data. We see it there. It's definitely doing better than, you know, Frost and Fire Mage and Distro and Affliction. So there you go. This is like the final image for the first week. Goddamn.
We've never had so many specs at the bottom, so this was a hard one because we're not trying to like, you know, dose ourselves with copium to the max. but we are trying to have like a fair look over the specs, and we know that people usually take this a little bit too seriously, and they think like, oh my god, I need to play S tier or it's bust, or if this is like B tier or below, it's not doable. It's not really the case, clearly, and it's still like the first inception of the overall meta. So we're gonna see. I bet you that the next time you're gonna see a ranged TLF video from us, this is gonna be looking way different.
Oh, 100%. And even with like the Affliction positioning, where we would have put it into F tier, once again, you're looking at Affliction, they're still doing like 15s and 16s, which is higher than we do so far. So it doesn't mean you're shit. Obviously, if you are playing the Warlock spec, you're probably gonna go demo because it's fun and it does really well.
And if not, you're just gonna have some fun just dotting stuff and, you know.
Yeah. But this is the final image. We want to always thank the patrons for supporting the content. You know, we always said this. We love you guys. If you ever wanted to support the Marcelian&Online family, you can check the link in the description. There's all types of goodies there. Check them out for yourself. It's not required, but it goes a long way on supporting all of the content that we do here. Thank you very much for watching this video. It has been a tier list Friday, with Friday appropriate day being here.
We conclude the tier list week and we wish you happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody. See you very soon. Bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.